Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel English Rise. If you feel nervous, blocked, or anxious when speaking English, this video is for you. Here, we don't focus only on grammar. We explore what happens inside your mind. If you want to improve your English listening and speaking skills while understanding the psychological side of fluency, consider subscribing to English Rise. Now let's begin. Part 1. Why speaking English feels scary even when you understand it. Many people understand English well. They can read, they can listen, they know vocabulary. But when it is time to speak, fear appears. This fear is not logical. It does not come from lack of knowledge. It comes from exposure. Speaking is public. Speaking is visible. Speaking creates vulnerability. Your brain associates speaking with judgment, and the brain's main job is protection. Part 2. How the brain interprets speaking as a threat. When you speak a foreign language, your brain senses risk. Not physical risk, social risk. The fear of sounding wrong. The fear of being misunderstood. The fear of being evaluated. Your nervous system activates. Heart rate increases. Thoughts become scattered. Words disappear. This is not weakness. It is biology. Part 3. Why perfectionism makes speaking worse. Many learners wait to speak until they feel ready. But readiness never arrives. Perfectionism raises the standard too high. Your brain freezes because the cost of mistakes feels dangerous. Speaking fluently requires imperfection. Mistakes are not failure. They are feedback. Part 4. How school and past experiences shape this fear. For many people, English was learned in school, through tests, corrections, red pens. The brain remembers this. Speaking triggers old emotions, shame, embarrassment, fear of being wrong. These emotions return automatically. Not because you are bad at English, but because your brain remembers stress. Part 5. Why thinking too much blocks speaking. When you speak, your brain should flow, but fear forces control. You start thinking about grammar, about pronunciation, about structure. This slows everything down. Fluency is automatic. Fear is analytical. They cannot coexist. Part 6. The role of identity. Why speaking English feels like exposing yourself. When you speak your native language, you feel whole. Your personality is intact. Your humor works. Your intelligence is visible. But when you speak English, your identity feels reduced. You sound simpler, slower, less precise. This creates discomfort. Your brain interprets this as a threat to your social identity. It feels like you are not fully yourself. And the mind resists situations where identity feels unstable. This is why speaking English can feel emotionally uncomfortable, even if you understand everything. Part 7. Why the ego tries to protect you by silencing you. The ego's job is protection, not growth, not fluency, protection. When you speak English, the ego fears embarrassment, so it creates excuses. I'm tired. My English is not good today. I'll speak later. Silence feels safer than mistakes, but safety blocks progress. Daily exposure slowly teaches the ego that speaking is not dangerous. Only repetition dissolves this fear. Part 8. How fear shuts down. Access to words you already know. Have you ever known the word but couldn't say it? This is not lack of vocabulary. It is stress. When fear activates the nervous system, the brain prioritizes survival. Language becomes secondary. Your mind goes blank because it is in defense mode. This is why calm practice matters. Fluency grows in safety, not pressure. Part 9. Why speaking alone feels easier. And why that's important. When you speak alone, there is no evaluation, No judgment, no risk. Your nervous system relaxes. This is why speaking alone is not childish. It is neurological training. You teach your brain. English is safe. Once safety is learned privately, it transfers publicly. Part 10. How daily habits reprogram the fear response. Fear is learned, and what is learned can be unlearned. Daily habits expose you gently. Listening every day, speaking softly, repeating familiar phrases. This rewires association. English stops triggering fear and starts triggering familiarity. Over time, fear fades without force. Part 11. Why confidence is a consequence, not a requirement. Many learners wait to feel confident, but confidence comes after action. Speaking while afraid teaches the brain courage, not dramatic courage. Quiet courage. Daily habits build trust between you and yourself, and trust is confidence. Part 12. How accepting imperfection frees your speech. Fluent speakers are not perfect. They are flexible. They allow pauses. They correct themselves. They move forward. When you accept imperfection, your brain relaxes. And relaxed brains speak better. Part 13. Why fear is a sign you are doing something right. Fear appears at growth edges. If speaking English scares you, it means you care. It means you are stepping forward. Avoidance keeps fear alive. Exposure dissolves it. Slowly, gently, daily. Part 14. How repetition transforms fear into familiarity. Fear survives in the unknown. What you don't face stays powerful. What you repeat becomes normal. When you expose yourself to English daily, even in small doses, your brain stops treating it as a threat. The sounds become familiar. The rhythm becomes predictable. The language becomes expected. This familiarity sends a signal to your nervous system. You are safe. And safety is the foundation of fluent speech. Part 15. Why speaking English is an emotional skill, not just a technical one. Many people treat English like math, rules, structures, formulas. But speaking is emotional. It involves confidence, presence, self-expression. If emotions are blocked, speech is blocked. Daily habits train emotional tolerance. You learn to stay present even when words are imperfect. And that presence creates flow. Part 16. How the fear gradually loses control. Fear does not disappear suddenly. It weakens. First, you feel fear but speak anyway. Then, you feel fear for less time. Then, fear appears only briefly. Then, it disappears. This is how psychological change works. Not through force, through repetition. Daily habits quietly dismantle fear. Part 17. Why most people misunderstand fluency. Fluency is not fast speech. Fluency is comfort. Comfort with silence. Comfort with mistakes. Comfort with not knowing a word. When you are comfortable, communication flows. Daily exposure builds this comfort, and comfort builds fluency. Part 18. How English becomes a tool, not a test. At some point, English stops feeling like evaluation. It becomes a tool, a way to express ideas, a way to connect, a way to understand the world. This shift happens when fear is no longer in control. And fear loses control through daily calm practice. Part 19. Reflection. Speaking English feels scary because it touches identity, ego, and emotion. Not because you are incapable. Fear is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of growth. And growth requires exposure. Small, daily, consistent. Part 20. Why your brain confuses language with social survival. The human brain evolved for survival in groups. Thousands of years ago, being rejected by the group meant danger. Isolation meant death. Even today, your brain still carries this ancient programming. When you speak English, especially in front of others, your brain senses potential rejection. Not logical rejection, social rejection. It asks silently, what if they judge me? What if I sound stupid? What if I don't belong? This activates the same systems used for survival. That is why fear feels intense. Your brain is not trying to sabotage you. It is trying to protect you. Part 21. Why your inner voice becomes harsh when you speak English. Many learners notice something strange. Their inner voice becomes cruel. You sound bad. This is embarrassing. You should stop. This voice is not truth. It is defense. The mind uses criticism to prevent exposure. If it convinces you to stop, it believes it has protected you. Understanding this changes everything. You stop fighting yourself and start calming the system. Part 22. How shame from the past continues to shape your present. Some people were laughed at. Some were corrected harshly. Some were told they were bad at English. The brain remembers emotional pain. Even years later, those moments live inside the nervous system. When you try to speak, the body reacts before the mind. Tension, dry mouth, blank thoughts. This is not a language problem. It is an emotional memory, and emotional memories require safety to dissolve. Part 23. Why force makes speaking worse. Trying to push through fear often backfires. Force increases tension. Tension reduces access to language. That is why aggressive practice often increases anxiety. The brain learns English equals stress. Calm repetition teaches the opposite. It teaches English equals safety. Part 24. How slow speech rebuilds trust with your brain. Speaking slowly is not weakness. It is regulation. Slow speech gives your nervous system time. Time to breathe. Time to think. Time to stay present. Daily slow speaking practice rebuilds trust. Your brain learns, I can speak without danger. Speed comes later. Always later. Part 25. Why fluent people are not braver. They are calmer. Fluent speakers are often misunderstood. People think they are fearless. They are not. They are regulated. Their nervous system stays calm while speaking. Calm creates access to memory. Calm creates flow. Daily habits train calmness, not bravery. Part 26. How listening trains emotional safety. Listening to calm, clear English does more than teach words. It trains emotional safety. Your brain hears English without pressure to respond. This lowers threat. Over time, English stops triggering anxiety. This is why listening is not passive. It is emotional conditioning. Part 27. Why your brain needs proof, not affirmations. Positive thinking helps, but it is not enough. The brain trusts experience. Every time you speak and survive, the brain updates its beliefs. This was not dangerous. Daily habits provide this proof. Small proofs accumulate, and fear weakens. Part 28. How daily practice builds a new relationship with mistakes. Mistakes feel dangerous only when they are rare. Daily practice makes mistakes normal. When mistakes are frequent, they lose emotional weight. You stop reacting. You correct and move on. This emotional neutrality is a sign of fluency. Part 29. Why avoidance makes fear stronger. Avoidance feels good short-term, but it teaches the brain. This was dangerous. Fear grows in avoidance. Exposure shrinks it. Not extreme exposure, gentle exposure, daily, controlled, safe. Part 30. How speaking English becomes part of your self-image. At first, you say, I'm learning English. Later you say, I speak English. This shift is subtle, but powerful. It happens through repetition. Identity changes when behavior repeats. And once identity shifts, fear loses power. Part 31. How the nervous system controls your ability to speak English. Speaking English is not controlled only by the brain. It is controlled by the nervous system. When your nervous system feels safe, language flows. When it feels threatened, language shuts down. This is why sometimes you speak well, and other times you forget everything. The difference is not knowledge. It is regulation. If your body is tense, your breath shallow, your jaw tight, your brain cannot access language easily. Daily calm exposure trains regulation. Over time, your nervous system learns that English is not a threat, and when the body relaxes, words return. Part 32. Why anxiety makes you feel less intelligent in English. Many learners say, "I feel stupid when I speak English." This feeling is painful, but it is not real. Anxiety reduces working memory. It narrows attention. It limits expression. You are not less intelligent. You are less regulated. When anxiety decreases, your intelligence returns. Daily habits reduce anxiety not by force, but by familiarity. Familiar situations feel safer. And safety restores cognitive access. Part 33. How your brain links language to self-worth. Language is deeply tied to identity. When you cannot express yourself well, you feel smaller. This is why speaking English feels personal. Your brain links performance to self-worth. Mistakes feel like exposure of inadequacy. This link must be broken. Daily low-pressure practice teaches the brain. Mistakes are not danger. Expression is more important than perfection. This separation frees speech. Part 34. Why silence feels safer than speech. And how to change that. Silence feels safe because it avoids evaluation. But silence also reinforces fear. Each time you stay silent, your brain believes it made the right choice. Daily habits gently reverse this. You speak in controlled environments. You speak without consequences. You speak without judgment. Gradually, speech becomes safer than silence. This is a powerful shift. Part 35. How time pressure triggers panic in speaking. Being rushed is dangerous for fluency. When you feel pressure to respond quickly, fear increases. Your brain switches from expression to survival. Daily slow practice removes time pressure. You learn to pause, to breathe, to think. This trains calm response. Fluency grows in space, not urgency. Part 36. Why your brain needs repeated safe experiences to change. Insight alone does not rewire fear. Experience does. Your brain needs repeated proof that speaking English is safe. Not once, not twice. Many times. Daily habits provide these repetitions. Small, safe, predictable experiences gradually overwrite fear memories. This is how deep change happens. Part 37. How fluency emerges when fear loses its voice. Fear never disappears completely, but it becomes quiet. It stops controlling behavior. You may still feel nervous, but you speak anyway. This is the transition point. When action no longer depends on emotion, this is not courage. This is regulation. And regulation is fluency's foundation. Part 38. Why comfort with imperfection is the final psychological barrier. Fluency is not speaking perfectly. It is speaking comfortably. Comfort with mistakes. Comfort with pauses. Comfort with simplicity. Daily habits normalize imperfection. When imperfection feels safe, expression expands. This is the final psychological door. Part 39. How speaking English stops feeling like a performance. At first, speaking feels like acting. You monitor yourself. You judge every word. Over time, this fades. English becomes a tool, not a stage. You stop performing and start communicating. This is the moment fear loses its purpose. Part 40. When fear stops being the enemy and becomes information. At some point in your journey, fear changes its role. In the beginning, fear controls you. It tells you to stay quiet. It convinces you that you are not ready. It creates excuses that sound logical but feel heavy. But as you practice daily, calmly, without pressure, something shifts. Fear no longer feels like a wall. It starts to feel like a signal. You notice that fear appears mostly when you care about being judged. You want to sound perfect. You compare yourself to others. This awareness is powerful because now fear is no longer an order, it is information. And when fear becomes information, you regain choice. You can feel nervous and still speak. You can feel insecure and still express yourself. You can feel imperfect and still communicate. This is the moment when English stops being something you try to survive and starts becoming something you use. Part 41. The day English stops feeling like a test. Most people don't realize this, but they are constantly testing themselves. Every sentence feels like an exam. Every conversation feels like a score. Every mistake feels like failure. This mindset is exhausting, and it is one of the main reasons speaking English feels scary. But slowly, through daily exposure, repetition, and calm practice, the test disappears. You stop asking, "Was that correct? Did I sound stupid? What do they think of me?" Instead, your attention shifts outward. You focus on meaning, on connection, on getting your point across. This is not fluency yet. This is freedom. Fluency grows naturally from freedom. When English is no longer a test, your brain stops defending itself. And when defense disappears, expression expands. Part 42. Why confidence in English is a byproduct, not a goal. Many learners chase confidence. They say, "I'll speak when I feel confident." But confidence does not come first. It comes last. Confidence is built quietly, invisibly, in moments that feel small. Speaking even when your voice shakes. Finishing a sentence even if it's simple. Understanding more than yesterday. Expressing yourself without apologizing. Each of these moments rewires your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is bad at English. You start seeing yourself as someone who speaks English. That identity shift is everything. Confidence is not something you force. It is something that emerges when fear loses control over your behavior. Part 43. When English becomes part of who you are. There is a final psychological transition that few people talk about. English stops being a skill you practice and starts becoming a language you live with. You don't translate anymore. Not because you trained hard, but because your brain no longer feels threatened. You don't overthink grammar, not because you memorized rules, but because your focus is on meaning. You don't panic when you don't know a word. You simply find another way to say it. This is fluency, not perfect English, not fast English, but calm, functional, human English. And it was never about intelligence. It was never about talent. It was about understanding your mind and training it gently, daily, consistently. If speaking English has always felt scary, now you know why. It was never because you were incapable. It was because your mind was trying to protect you. And once you understand that, you stop fighting yourself. You start working with your psychology, not against it. If this video helped you understand your fear and showed you that fluency is possible without pressure, make sure you're subscribed to English Rise. Here, we don't just teach English, we train your mind to feel safe speaking it. See you in the next video.